Hey everyone, so for this Tuesday tip, we're going to cover masks from our reference. So getting masks really quickly from reference and being able to use those in any program that you want to use them in. So this week I found some burnt out wood and paint on a walk with my dog, took some pictures with my iPhone, so I'm going to show you that and how I got reference and how I got into Painter very, very quickly to make a few masks that you see down here. And this is the masks. So I had two masks right here and I just stenciled them on, and I'll show you that process really quickly. So what we have is, if I go over to Photoshop, we have this here. This is the reference that I took. Well, this is the object that I took reference of. So fireworks gone wrong down at the school next to my house, and so it was just this big wooden wall out in the playground, and it looks like probably someone shot off fireworks at the edge and started on fire. So this is the object, but I went and took some other reference photos of it closer up, and so here's one here of just the wood from the other side of the one that wasn't burnt. So there's two of them, and so this one, if we zoom in, we can see that there's this blue paint, and then we have the wood. And if I zoom in really closely, you can see that this isn't the best photo. This was taken with my phone, so it's, it's got some artifact in there. It looks like it's, got blurred a little bit, just with the compression and everything of the phone. So that's okay. I mean, for these masks, it's really easy to make these and edit them, and I really just want the general look of them, and then I can do whatever I want with them later. So, and layer them in Painter and do everything. So with this one, the way to do this, and you can see the mask that I got right here, the way to do this is really, really simple. So inside of Photoshop, we go select and we do color range, and then we can select our color range. So if I zoom in and I select the wood color, the darker wood color, and I mess with this fuzziness, you can see that it starts to select that wood color. And if I select the blue here and I mess with this fuzziness, it shows me from that selection point a range of color that it will select. So as I bring this up, it's selecting more and more blue, and then as it goes further, it expands off in that color range to select more and more and more. So if I bring this back a little bit, let me zoom out here, and we'll just find a good range. And this is the mask that you're creating. So if you want really heavy, you want a lot to work with, we can do that, because you can always use the levels and push it back and forth inside of Painter. So I'll do this one here, and so now it's selected that color. You can see that we've selected that color over here. So what I'm going to do is just make it black and white, make a new layer, Control Delete to add the white here, add one more layer, and then go Alt Delete to do a fill black. So now I have a mask, and I can Control E to flatten that layer. So now I have a new mask that I can use. And we can do a few things too if we want. We can filter, we can blur it if we want to blur it, we can sharpen it. We can just do a quick on sharpen mask and sharpen it up a little bit if we want. But I'm going to leave that on done, and I'm going to edit this mask inside of Painter or Mari or whatever I want to use with it. That way I have a little bit more flexibility with it. So the one thing inside of Painter is that because this is not square, when I bring this into Painter, it is going to make it square. So I do want to edit my canvas and change the height and square it off. And I could do 50-50 just so I have a little bit more. And I want to make sure that this is black. Hit enter. So now I have this new wood here. I'll go ahead and save that. Actually, I'll save it as another one here. So now we have this mask that we can put into Painter and use a stencil for it. So I'm going to do one more here, because that one was pretty simple with the blue. Now let's say I want to select this one down here, just the end. I like the way that burned looked here, and I've did that over here. I made like a stencil of the soot and the burnt crisps here, which is pretty cool. And I've got the burnt plywood, and I did a selection here, which gives me that like really nice patterning here, and some of that like that burn mark that goes up. So like some really cool patterns in here, like the flakiness of the paint where it's been burnt in the soot, and where it like went into the plywood cracks and really split apart as it burned. Really interesting stuff here. So with that selection, which is really cool, we can get these masks that we can use. So like I said, I'm going to make one that's a little bit harder. So this one here, if I go select color range and I select this black down here, what you can see is that I do want some of that fade here. I want some of that gradient up into the blue. But if I try and get that, it also gets a lot of this cement and everything else around it, right? So that's not very useful, but let's just start here and do it the same way. So new layer, Control Delete, and then new layer, Control D to deselect, and then Alt Delete to fill. So that gives me right up into here. But I want to get rid of the cement back here and everything like that. So one of the other selection tools that's really useful, so we've got select, color range, and this we've got the magic wand, but the quick selection tool works really well because I can just drag it down and drag it around, and I've got most of this now. And it got some of the wood, but I can go back in there, hold Alt and left click, and get rid of that wood up here. And get rid of this wood. Alt left click to get rid of that wood here. Shift left click to add back in the cement that I just unselected. And let's just zoom into that bottom piece here and make sure that I get there we go. So it wants to do a little bit more. So let's go ahead and use the magic wand and see what that one will give me. A little too much. So just go into the lasso tool and get that last little bit. And again, this is just the mask. So if it's off a little bit, that's okay, because it's not perfect. I'm not matching this thing one to one. All I'm doing is just getting some interesting texture out of it that I can then use and stencil into place. So now I have this all selected. We can go back up here, add a new layer, Alt Delete to fill it black, and now I filled this thing black. So with a couple selections here, we can get that mask. And if I wanted to, I think it'd probably be best to then go ahead and paint some of these edges out, so I don't have a hard edge along the side that I'm painting as well, especially up in here, because there is some interesting stuff in here. Yeah, and that would work here. So I'll save this off as a plank or score soot, and that will give me a nice little mask to work with here. And again, I do need to make this thing canvas size. And now it's square. So let's go over to Painter here. And so now in Painter, we had this wood over here. I'm just going to go ahead and reload it. And now it's the new one. But because I made another one, well, we've got wood B and we've got plank soot. So these are our two new masks that I've made. So I'm just going to drag them in to my project over here to the shelf in Painter, select both of them, tell them that they're alphas, and tell them to be a part of my project. And just hit import. So now I have these two new masks that I can work with. So let's make a new paint layer real quick. I'm just gonna make a new fill layer. Let's put it up top here. And I'm gonna create a black mask. I'm gonna create a paint layer. And let's give this some color. We'll make it some green paint. And it'll be a little rough. We'll give it a little bit of height. And I'll give it a little bit more just so you can see what it's doing. and I think that's good. So now we just need to paint a mask on here. So if I paint on here, the green shows up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into orthographic view and snap it into place. And so now we're seeing a perfect view, top-down view. And so now we have these two new masks here. And so with the paintbrush inside the properties for paint, I'm just going to drag this one over. Oops. I selected the wrong alpha. Double clicked on an accident and put it in an alpha. And I actually don't want that. I don't want to place down an alpha here. What I want let's just go back to brushes real quick. Default soft. And what I want to do is drag it into the stencil. So would be drag into the stencil. So now we have this stencil up here, and I can move this thing around. And if I hold down S, you can see that at the bottom left of the viewport, all the shortcut keys show up. So I can just drag this into the place that I want, and go ahead and just paint this down. And so as I fill this down, now our mask is on this wood here. Go ahead and delete that, and we can see this on here. And I'll go back to perspective view with F5, and now we have this on here. So we've got paint, it's on here, and if I go to height, you can see that the wood height is now blending with the paint height, but I'll set that to normal and just go ahead and knock that down a little bit so we get a little bit of the wood with the paint. And that's about it. I mean, I've created this mask super quickly from a photo that I took out on a walk last night, came back, made a mask out of it, and then threw it on into Painter, and it had some painted wood very, very quickly. And I do this a lot. I use that color range selection for a lot of things. It's super useful. And like I said, I left it fairly soft, right? I didn't levels it out. I didn't get like a black and white, pure black and white. I left a lot of gray in there so I can then use a levels. And with that levels, I can then push this paint around and how much I have or how much I don't, right? I can push that black out. I can push the white in to get more or less. So I have some range to mess with now with that paint, or with that mask really. So if I go ahead and alt left click on the layer, push that around, you can see that my mask changes with that levels because I gave it some range to play with inside of there. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Mask my color range again. So if I go back to Photoshop, let's just do this one, and it's select color range, and then you just select the color you want, and then you have a chance to how much of a range of that color you're willing to select. All right, so have a great week everyone, and I'll see you next week.